Welcome to lecture number 29. अभी तक हमने in previous lectures we have done a lot of ratios. हमने बहुत सा critical analysis किया है, and analytical हमने procedures use किए हैं to analyze and try to figure out what really is in the financial reports. इसके लिए we have done short term debt paying ability of any company, उस company की long term debt paying ability क्या है, what is the profitability, or what is the solvency. ये तमाम चीजें हमने through ratios we have tried to figure these out. Now we will look at the aspect as to what sort of ratios different people look at, when they try to analyze any financial report. So the first occupation that we will try to study is the loan officer. Basically आपके जो commercial banks हैं, आपके जो financial institutions हैं, when they give loan to any company or any organization, what sort of ratios do they look at? So the first point is financial ratios as perceived by commercial loan departments. Financial ratios can be used by a commercial loan department to aid the loan officers in deciding whether to grant a commercial loan and in maintaining control of a loan once it is granted. In order to gain insights into how commercial loan departments view financial ratios, a questionnaire was sent to the commercial loan department of 100 largest banks in the US. So जो डेटा आपके सामने मैं प्रेजेंट करूंगा, it will be based on questionnaires which were sent to 100 different banks in USA. उनके जो commercial departments थे, उनमें जो लोन ऑफिसर्स थे, they were sent these questionnaires और उनसे analytically ask हुआ था कि what sort of ratios do they prefer and what sort of ratios do they give importance to when they are trying to come up with a decision regarding whether to give loan or not. A list of 59 financial ratios was drawn from the financial literature, textbooks, and published industry data for this study. Up, this is Exhibit 11.1. It shows different ratios that were given as options to the loan officers. तो आपको इससे देख के अंदाजा होगा कि there are a lot of ratios which one can derive. As you remember, there is no fixed लिस्ट ऑफ रेशियोज. हर कोई रेशियोज अपने पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, अपने बेनिफिट से, अपनी टेक्निकलिटी के हिसाब से हर कोई अपने रेशियोज को उठाता है एंड देन दे ट्राई टू solve these ratios to come up with so called magical numbers के किस कंपनी की परफॉर्मेंस क्या है. अच्छा, the study set 3 objectives. The significance of each ratio in the opinion of the commercial loan officers. तो पहला था कि commercial loan officers जो हैं उनके नजरिए में किस रेशियो की कितनी significance है, कितनी अहमियत है as per to what they do and what sort of background do they have. Second है how frequently each ratio is included in loan agreements. Obviously जब I'll tell you how it happens. होता है कि when you give loan to any company, तो obviously you have an agreement. उस agreement में you can mention कि ये ratios इस level पे इन organizations को maintain करने पड़ेंगे in order to keep that loan agreement intact. What a specific financial ratio primarily measures in the opinion of commercial loan officers. So ये वाले ratios दिए गए थे commercial loan officers को. Most significant ratios and their primary measure. Exhibit 11.2 displays the 10 financial ratios given the highest significance rating by the commercial loan officers as well as the primary measure of these ratios. The highest rating is 9 and the lowest rating is 0. So if any ratio is given a rating of 0, it means in the eyes of the commercial loan officer, it has no validity and it is of no importance. और अगर किसी को 9 रेटिंग दी गई है, उसका मतलब है कि this ratio has a very significant position when it comes to the granting loan. Most of the ratios given a high significance rating were regarded primarily as measures of liquidity or debt. So इससे आपको आइडिया होगा कि जो लोन ऑफिसर्स हैं when they are deciding whether to give loan or not, तो वो the two most important aspects they keep in mind are liquidity or debt. अब debt means के uh, do you have the financial muscle to pay your obligations? Do you have the financial muscle to pay your short term and long term obligations? So all such aspects are related to debt. Only two of the top 10 uh, ratios measures profitability, five measure debt, and three measure liquidity. The two profitability ratios were two different computations of the net profit margin. One is net profit margin after tax, and the second one is net profit margin before tax. Two of the top three ratios were measures of debt, and the other ratio was a measure of liquidity. The debt equity ratio was given the highest significance rating, with the current ratio the second highest. We can assume that the financial ratios rated most significant by commercial loan officers would have the greatest influence on a loan decision. So these are the most significant ratios in the eyes of the commercial loan officers and commercial loan department. जब किसी भी कंपनी को कोई लोन देना होता है तो these are the ratios that the officers sitting in the commercial bank loan branch look at. सबसे important is your debt equity ratio. Then comes your current ratio. अब आप देखेंगे the first one is related to debt equity ratio के through in eyes of the loan officer the best outcome is how well the company can take care of its debt. So you can see first one is debt, then it's liquidity, paid debt. So debt and liquidity play a very significant role in eyes of the commercial loan officers. Uske baad you have profitability, and again you have profitability. So it's the first one is debt equity, then you have current ratio, then cash flow, current maturities of long-term debt, then fixed charge coverage. So all these ratios are very significant when we talk about granting loan to any company or not. Ratios appearing most frequently in loan agreements. A commercial bank may elect to include a ratio as part of a loan agreement. When you are doing an agreement with any company, so as a loan officer, you have to make sure that आप अपने agreement में चंद एक ratios include करें with their acceptable लेवल कि ये रेशो इस लेवल पे आएगा तो लोन बरकरार रहेगा अगर रेशो लोन उस लेवल से कम आएगा so that can somehow change the loan agreement between the bank and the loan. This would be a way of using ratios to control an outstanding loan. Exhibit 11.3 contains a list of 10 financial ratios that appear most frequently in loan agreements, along with an indication of what each ratio primarily measures. For the two ratios that do not have a primary measure indicated, there was no majority opinion as to what the ratio primarily measure. So ये आपके commercial loan department के point of view से ratios appearing most frequently in loan agreement. जो आपका highest है that is again your debt equity और ये 92.5% जो था उसकी percentage है in loan agreement और उसका primary measure is debt. देन यू हैव करंट रेशियो फिर डिविडेंड पे आउट रेशियो तो आप देखेंगे जो सारे आपके हैं वो ज्यादातर डेट और लिक्विडिटी को हिट करते हैं सो whenever you give loan to any company you have to make sure that you keep a close eye on the debt position and the liquidity position of that company. Financial ratios as perceived by corporate controller. Now, what is who and what is a corporate controller? A corporate controller oversees all the financial and accounting functions of a given organization, including billing, accounts, payable and receivable, budgeting, and other functions. To get the views of corporate controllers on important issues relating to financial ratios, a questionnaire was sent to the controllers of the companies included in the Fortune 500 list of the largest industrials. The questionnaires use the same ratios used for commercial loan department survey. The three objectives of this ratio were the determination of the significance of a specific ratio as perceived by controllers, which financial ratios are included as corporate objectives, and the primary measure of each ratio. So most significant ratios and their primary measure. So when we talk about corporate controller, the corporate controller की नजर में earnings per share is a very significant ratio, or it is related to profitability. Then you have return on equity after tax, net profit margin after tax, debt equity ratio. So when you look at it, आप देखते हैं कि from the point of view of the corporate controller, profitability is a very important, in fact, it is the most significant aspect when it comes to the corporate controllers. The financial executives gave the profitability ratios the highest significance ratings. The highest rated debt ratio was debt equity, while the highest rated liquidity ratio was the current ratio. और वो आपकी आ गई नंबर 10 पे. In comparing the response of the commercial loan officers and controllers, the controllers rate the profitability ratios as having the highest significance, while the commercial loan officers rate the debt and liquidity ratios the highest. Key financial ratios included as corporate objectives. Now, what is a corporate objective? Corporate objectives are statements of intent that provide the basic direction for the activities of an organization in pursuit of its mission. Many firms have selected key financial ratios to be included as part of their corporate objectives. The next section of the survey was designed to determine what ratios the firms used in their corporate objectives. One ratio, account receivable turnover in days, appear in the top 10 ratios in relation to corporate objectives, but not in the top 10 significant ratios. One ratio, the price earning ratio, appears in the top 10 ratio in relation to the significance, but not in the top 10 ratios used for corporate objectives. So इससे आपको आइडिया होगा कि जरूरी नहीं है कि जिस चीज को आप अहमियत दें उसको आप ऑब्जेक्टिव में भी आप उसको शामिल करें, बिकॉज इट कैन देयर इज ऑलवेज अ डिफरेंस ऑफ ओपिनियन. Logically, there would be a high correlation between the ratios rated as highly significant and those included in corporate objectives. The debt equity ratio and the current ratio are rated higher on the objective list than on the significance list. This makes sense. In a firm has to have some balance in its objective between liquidity, debt, and profitability. So ratios appearing in corporate objectives and their primary measure. इनमें जो सबसे important है, it is earnings per share. Then it relates to profitability. Then you have debt equity ratio. जैसे आपने पढ़ा था, it is always related to debt. How well can you take care of the immediate obligations or the long-term obligations that you will encounter. Financial ratios as perceived by CPAs. Now, CPA, is a very uh, certified public accountants, and they form the backbone of the accounting industry. So, whatever opinion they hold, obviously, is of a lot of importance, and it can influence the way the accounting industry functions. उसकी वजह है कि if the CPAs prefer a certain type of ratio, they will always try to use it more, and this can mold the way this industry works. A questionnaire was sent to one-third of the members of Ohio Society of CPAs who were registered as partner in a CPA firm. So when you're registered as a partner in a CPA firm, so it shows what you think is obviously how you behave. So agar as a CPA आप you believe that certain ratios are important, so obviously you will always try to incorporate those ratios in your financial reports. जो आपके customers होंगे उनको भी वो reports आप encourage करेंगे to use. This questionnaire used the same ratios as were used for the commercial loan department and corporate controllers. The specific objectives of this study were to determine the following from the viewpoint of the CPA. The specific financial ratios that CPAs view primarily as a measure of liquidity, debt, and profitability. The relative importance of the financial ratios viewed as measure of liquidity, debt, or profitability. Exhibit 11.6 displays the financial ratios given the highest significance written by the CPAs and the primary measure of these ratios. Primary measure of these ratios, कि when you choose current ratio, एक तो we know there's a standard definition कि what does current ratio tell us. दूसरा होता है कि how do you look at the ratio as a CPA, कि when you look at that figure, तो what sort of interpretation can you come up with. So the first one is current ratio, which relates to liquidity, and it has the highest significance. Then you have account receivable turnover in days after tax, return on equity, debt equity ratios. So yeah, basically this is how the CPS think. In the same way, CFAs, chartered financial analysts, they are the ones who mainly, deal with the financial analysis of data and financial analysis of reports. Exhibit 11.7 displays the 10 financial ratios given the highest significance rating by CFS and the primary measure of these ratios. Again, the highest rating is a 9 and the lowest rating is a 0. So from the point of view of the CFA, the most significant ratio is return on equity after tax. And आप देखेंगे CFA के point of view से the most important aspect is profitability and then comes debt. So the second one is price earnings ratio, then you have earnings per share, net profit margin. Primary measure indicated to be other than liquidity, debt, or profitability. The ratios related this way tend to be related to stock analysis. So when we talk about CFAs or any other category, so आप देखते हैं कि अगर वो if they talk about other, so that other always relate to the stock analysis. How does the stock behave of any company? So this is the end of lecture number 20.